Hey guys, we're at the first Patreon assembly here with Lindsay Ellis, and she says one of the only things she's great at is Patreon, so this is a really great place for you to be right now.
Yeah, great is a strong word. I think lucky is a better word.
Well, as a creator though, I think that you could create for all different platforms. Why is it that Patreon is the one that you feel best at?
Well, a lot of it has to do with demographics. Whenever you have an audience that is let's say older, they're more likely to have an expendable income, which means they are more likely to, kind of be the NPR crowd that is like, oh yes, I like this content, I feel comfortable giving to it. Whereas when you have an audience of teenagers, they don't really have the money to give to Patreon. So basically doing well on Patreon isn't just a question of engagement. It's also a question of how does your audience have the extra $2 a month to give to their favorite artists.
But that's interesting because some of the content that you really focus on are Transformers and Disney and musicals. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think that was the older crowd of expendable income givers.
When I say older, I mean people in their 30s, like people who are my age. And I think it does kind of appeal to people, especially when you do nostalgia-based stuff that is let's talk about some stuff that came out in the 90s, or Transformers is it's less about Transformers, the stuff that I do, so much as film theory and academia. So it's accessible academic concepts told in very simple ways is what I do.
For the creators out there who don't exactly know how to start, is what you did just pick the things you love and find a way to create around them? Or did you start creating things and figure out then what the best topics to talk about were?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, yeah, I would say that the way I went about it, because I've been doing this for a long time, but I only started being successful at it once I found a way to take the things that I was interested in and that I loved and made them accessible to other people. Because no one cares about Michael Bay's Transformers, but if you can take that and turn it into something new and interesting, then people will be like, oh, okay, actually, that is an interesting angle. Because the way I went about it was let's discuss film theory concepts, because that's what my undergraduate degree is in, using only Michael Bay's Transformers, and people would be like, oh wow, okay, different. I don't necessarily care about one of those things, but I care about the educational aspect and critical theory applied to a dumb thing. So
why and how? I'm just trying to understand how your brain works. You were like, nobody cares about Michael Bay's Transformers, but I do. Exactly. And I'll explain this. Where did that come from? You just picked something random and you were like, hopefully this works?
No, honestly, it was something that I had been talking about for years with some of my colleagues, and we had always kind of held off on it because I thought nobody cared. And then eventually I was like, actually, well, I mean, if you frame it in a different way and you can sell it in a way that people are interested in, then you can create a product that people might not otherwise seek out.
You mentioned before not being necessarily successful at it until that point. Mm-hmm. I think in 2019 it's really challenging to define success, because is that financial success? Is it in your soul success?
Yeah.
So how are you right now as a creator being able to define success?
It's honestly really difficult because YouTube, it basically forces you to be consistent, or it punishes you. So there's also, when you say successful, be oh, well, maybe I am growing at X number of metric for this month. Maybe I'll gain 20, 30,000 subscribers in a month. And okay, does that mean I'm successful? Because YouTube kind of is designed in such a way that it always moves the goalpost. So I think success really is, it's an internal thing. It's personal, because some people will consider someone successful if they get 10,000 subs, and some people with million plus subs still feel like they're not there yet. I know people with 10 million plus subs that still feel that they still have imposter syndrome. They still feel like they're not there yet. So really, I think it is an internal process.
One of the things I think is really amazing about Patreon is you do get to be your own boss, but at the same time, you're a creator, I'm a creator, I love Patreon, but now I have to put on my business-minded hat, because now I don't just get to create, I have to figure out what is the best thing to do for tiers and to sell. How have you learned so far to put on that business hat, and how challenging has that been for you?
I think the most important thing I have learned in terms of business hat is how to delegate, and because Patreon has allowed me not only to hire a staff and have like both full-time and part-time employees, but also to like give them benefits, give them health insurance, which I
Wow,
yeah.
can we just pause for 1 second? Like, do you guys even know how incredibly that is so hard to do?
It's expensive, but it's like if it weren't for Patreon, I could not do that. So it's enabled me to like help people, because like at least right now we don't have any kind of public health options. So I'm able to give health insurance to all my employees, but also I'm able to delegate tasks like YouTube comments, engaging with people on Patreon through messaging. So I'm able to have the brain space to actually tackle the projects I need to tackle, because I am able to hire people to help me with the actual labor of all of the things you need to do in order to have an online presence.
I'm ridiculously impressed right now, if you can't tell. How many members on your staff do you have?
I have 3 part-time and 1 full-time.
And how long did that take you from starting Patreon until whenever you were able to hire them?
Let's see, I started Patreon in 2014, I think, and it was a very slow growth. And then when I hired my first full-time employee, I think like also, that's Angelina, my co-writer, then the quality just shot up, and then people started noticing and were a lot more willing to like subscribe to Patreon, because they're like, oh, effort, you're doing a lot better now. So she was my first full-time hire, and then after that I have my production manager, David, who handles all my production locally and also all my business stuff, and my friend Lisa handles all of my basically online platforms, the social media, the Patreon. She's in charge of that, and also my YouTube comments. She's the one that deletes all your horrible comments.
Thank you guys so much for all of those.
Yeah.
Let's only
So
have
helpful.
positive comments here in the feed. Thank you guys so much for watching AfterBuzz TV. You clearly don't need our help. We'll go check her out and write only positive things.
Yeah.
Buzz you later.